Well, I think part of that too, and a lot of this budget conversation can revolve around the geography and area that you live in as well. A lot of things play into this budget
Oh, it's so
conversation.
true.
I mean, I had a resident,
Yep.
anesthesiology resident in New York City, and
Right.
different story on budget. And she's like,
Yeah.
we're walking through our whole budget exercise at our first meeting, and we get to the eating out category, and she's like, probably $2,000 a month. And I'm like, what? Like, you know, and
Wow.
now, yes, she's in New York, but still, New York residents don't make any more than residents anywhere else for the most part. So,
Right.
it's easier to spend a lot of money in New York. I get that, but it just probably takes that much more discipline to not spend that. And the other thing about a budget is,
That's a lot of
like you
money.
said, we're talking about mindset, philosophy on
Hmm.
budget, on spending. The book you're talking about sounds like it kind of gave you a mindset shift a little bit on spending and cash flow. And a lot of that comes from how we were raised and our environment.
Hmm.
There's that whole nature nurture conversation of some of us are just, no matter how we were raised, we're going to be terrible spenders or great savers or whatever case might be. But I think our parents and our culture we came from certainly has some impact on that. My dad was pretty frugal. He made good money, but you wouldn't know it, and he's kind of that millionaire
Hmm.
next door that retired with a couple $1,000,000 in a 401k, which was plenty for him because he didn't have a big lifestyle to maintain. And he's never going to spend all his retirement investments.
That's great.
Plus he's got a pension, so it's just even more, it's just going to sit there. And I have to like
Hmm.
push him to be like, Dad, you can spend some money, spend something, buy a Corvette, like do that
Hmm.
stuff. But so that certainly rubbed off a little bit on me, but like all of us do with our parents, we take a little bit of the good and a little bit of the bad and create our own. But I'm probably more frugal than some, but not as cautious and conservative as my dad was. And I'm a little
Hmm.
more of maybe it's the millennial in me. And I'm just kind of on that borderline that's like, there's still some value in experiences, and a dollar isn't just a dollar. To my dad, it was. Everything could be put a price tag on it.
Right.
And I think my wife and I feel a little bit differently.
Yeah. There's all those like kind of hot articles about like if you stop eating lattes, it'll be worth like $100,000 in 30 years and stuff. It's like, but then you went 30 years without eating a latte or
But
drinking a
then you
latte
went 30 years, right?
or eating a pizza or whatever. It's like that sucks, man. Who wants to live that life? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not about $100 at that point. If you did that with bigger things like, a nice car, if you just like slam dunk the more expensive stuff, then like, yeah, like a really nice car for me right now would be like giving up $1 million in retirement. Like, okay,
Yep.
that's worth thinking about. That's worth thinking about for sure. Maybe you're going to be worth, if you're going to plan on being worth $25 million, then you're like, okay, well, do I want to just have a fast car when I'm 55, or would it be more actually fun to have one when I'm like 35? Like, that's a fair
Yeah.
trade-off as long as you're making the trade-off like, you're seeing it for what it is. That's I mean, you can do that.
Well,
Um
and that kind of leads to what I was telling you before. I mean, my wife and I were looking at this house in Lake Michigan, and
yeah,
I don't make
right.
$1,000,000 a year. I'm not, we're not in that category where it necessarily makes sense right now. But we
Hmm.
just kind of had a frank conversation earlier this year, and we're like, how about we not wait for retirement on some of these dreams? Why do these have to be retirement dreams? What if we just got a little bit
Right.
creative and tried to find a way to make this work now? And it's kind of one of those like
Hmm.
strangest secret things where it's like the secret, you speak something in, you kind of have it on your mind, and it'll just somehow magically happen. And we're like, okay, we're going to
Hmm.
start taking step towards that. We're going to research it. We're going to talk to people, and let's just like believe that this is going to happen at some point, and maybe a way will come out. And so like the house we were looking at this week was right now out of our price range just to get it and use it. But I've started talking
Hmm.
to some really interesting people that have had profitable vacation rentals in that area.
Hmm.
And,
Yep.
I'm just like, if we can just break even. And so I've met several different property management companies that specialize in vacation rentals, and they can run some numbers for me and tell me. And I'm starting to see
Hmm.
like, I think this could work. and I don't have to spend any of my money.
Hmm.
So that's
Yep.
exactly, it's that same kind of thing where it's like, maybe we don't put this off. I mean, life is short, of course, but,
Hmm.
um, and then just the concept of a dollar today is worth more than a dollar, not inflation standpoint, but just to me. You and I are going to have more
That's
money in
right.
20 years than we do now. And so,
Hmm.
I know if we
Right.
put that away and it grows and invests, that's great. But there are things that have value today. Uh, anyway, there's a dollar has different value in different places. So, for example, I talk to residents all the time
Yes.
about the conversation of, should I take this dollar and pay my credit card down or put it in savings? And I always say, like, if you don't have an emergency fund built up, you need to get that done, because in my mind, a dollar liquid in the bank ready to use is more valuable than that same dollar put on a credit card, even though, yes, it pays off interest and blah, blah, blah. But right now for you, that's more valuable in the bank and savings. That'll change in 6 to 12 months when they have their emergency fund funded. Then, yeah, maybe we can talk about
Hmm.
paying down your credit card.
Right.
But it kind of, yeah, gets into that just value conversation. So talk to me. You got into residency, you used Mint and kind of started to work with that a little bit. What did you find? What
Yeah.
else did you find that worked well when you got out of, well, I guess let me just kind of go back to med school a little bit. Did you find something that worked well when you got that lump sum disbursement that helped you to kind of hang on to some of that?
I couldn't really figure out what to do correctly on that, and most of my time was just spent studying. It really genuinely was like,
Yeah.
you study the first year a lot and you think that all of that stuff you learn is going to really matter, and a lot of it actually doesn't. But you're kind of just learning how to study to a certain degree too.
Fair
Like, it was a
enough.
lot
Yeah.
of inefficient study time, but I think you kind of, for me, I had to do that, and then I was efficient to study the more valuable material the second year. And
Hmm.
I went to University of Michigan, and they've even changed their curriculum substantially now. You get into rotations a lot earlier, even in the second year, I think, and
Okay.
it's a little bit different. But anyways, back to the budgeting. I mean, I got a bunch of money. I didn't really know what to do with it. So, but I didn't want to like pay it back. I didn't want to like give it back because I didn't really know what to do if I ran out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, okay, so I've got like, I don't know, I don't even know what the numbers were. Let's say it's like $8,000 or $10,000, and it's just like sitting there in the bank, and then I'm paying 700 or 800 a month in rent month after month. And I kind of like just ballpark calculated it out, and I was like, this is how much food is going to cost, and then maybe some other amounts of things I'm going to spend here and there, a little bit of clothes or stuff.
Hmm.
I'm not a big spender, so it wasn't like I was planning on like breaking the bank at J. Crew like every other week. Not that they're like a place people shop anymore, I don't think. But
No, they actually filed for bankruptcy.
yeah, I'm pretty. That was hilarious because I'm sure I spent money there,
Yeah.
probably more than I could afford.